My name is Jenelle Riley. Thank you so much for joining us for this Q&A with everyone's obsession, Palm Royale. Today's guest is a WGA nominee whose work includes basically all your favorite shows, including Dead to Me, The Eyes of Tammy Faye. He's the showrunner on Apple TV Plus's series Palm Royale, which was just picked up for a second season. Please welcome Abe Sylvia.
Hi,
Hi, thank you so much for being here.
it's so nice to be here in our hotel rooms.
Our respective hotel rooms, yes, across the country. I was very self-conscious about mine, and now I'm even more self-conscious because yours looks a lot nicer.
Yeah, this is like a Nora Ephron movie back here.
I got the straight to DVD knockoff of the Nora movie. Um, Thank you so much for joining us. Well, whenever I have people as accomplished as you are, I actually love to go back to the beginning and ask, what do you consider your first job as a writer? The first time you were paid or the first time you felt you could call yourself a writer?
It was probably Nurse Jackie, where I entered as the staff writer on that show, and I had a feature that had premiered at the Toronto Film Festival that I wrote, but I wrote it on spec. And I wrote it in film school. So I can't count that as sort of a payday. It wasn't WGA covered. I get no residuals for the movie. So probably the first time somebody hired me to write was Nurse Jackie.
I think if you had a movie in the Toronto Film Festival, you can call yourself a writer then.
I wrote it for free and for a grade. I actually paid, because I was taking a class that I wrote that script in. So I actually paid someone else to, uh, I was out of pocket on that script.
It's a perfect metaphor for writing. Um, well, again, congratulations on Palm Royale. I hope they're paying you for that. It's actually funny. I was on stage with Kristen Wiig last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing she was receiving a Mary Tyler Moore Award when the news dropped that season 2 was picked up, and it was, I mean, she obviously already knew, I think, but it was so exciting, and the room was so excited to know that we're going to be able to continue this story.
That's so
Um, but actually, I'm going to go back and start at the beginning because I think it's based, but very loosely, on this book, Mr. and Mrs. American Pie. Can you
Yeah.
talk? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's, and it's a lovely book. There's very little of it left, I hate to say. But there was certainly a germ of an idea there that I responded to. And, primarily uh Katie O'Connell Marsh, our EP, and had an overall deal with Laura Dern's company, with Laura Dern and her producing partner, Jamie Lemons, and they found this book. And they brought it first to Tate Taylor to attach as a director, and Tate suggested me to adapt it. And I read the book and I said, it's a really wonderful book, but I think it's a book. I don't know if it's a TV series, but I will do anything for Laura Dern, as I think anybody in this Zoom would. And so I said, I would love to develop for Laura Dern, just sign me up. And so I think what I really responded to in the book was just this idea of an iconoclastic woman, a lovable in a china shop, person. I love sort of this primary love story between Maxine in the book and this closeted gay character named Robert, which in the book takes place in Arizona. Her marriage has already fallen. Most of the book takes place after her marriage has sort of fallen apart, and she meets this. But there are elements that we're pulling from the book, and one of the things I really loved about the book was this love story between, a straight iconoclastic woman and a closeted gay man. And that, that's a relationship I know really, really well. And so I was like, well, let's pull it forward. The book takes place in Palm Springs. I moved it to Palm Beach because I've always wanted to do a Slim Aarons show. So I was kind of able to like pull from all these things that I've wanted to do. And this book really sort of, and this opportunity to work with these producers really provided the vessel for it to blossom.
And the show, I don't know if the book is also set in 1969.
The book is mid-70s. I'm not sure. It's right around, the period is correct, I think. Yeah, as I recall.
So the show obviously set in an earlier time, but it feels so contemporary and timely in so many ways. Can you talk about some of the themes and the ideas you want to explore?
Well, the contemporary, I mean, I think audiences are more willing to take their medicine if you can create some distance. So I think like the period, the escapism of the show sort of allowed some of the themes to go down easier. I mean, the show first and foremost is like its highest purpose is to be delightful. and to be just consumed and enjoyed. And I think so much television, and I come out of a lot of writing anti-heroes and sort of darker shows. And I think coming out of COVID, I was like, I just want to make something really light. And my I came out of musical comedy, and I feel like that is as frothy and as frivolous as it can seem. It's really artful, and it takes a tremendous amount of skill to pull off something that has levity um and so we're sort of hiding our themes sort of behind this. So you can even watch it for the themes, or you can just watch it like on a purely escapist, but I think that the show wouldn't actually connect if it was just clothes and setting. So, you know, this idea, the contemporary idea that our best self is somewhere else, our best self is outside of ourselves. Our sense of identity is a projected sense. Everybody on social media is like, they have curated their lives and the way they present to the world, and that becomes more real to them than reality. And that's something that I'm finding, like, just within humanity and civilization as a writer, I'm like, I find really sad and also, comic and absurd. And so with this character who, Maxine is completely consumed with the superficial, and we relate. Like, I think all of us want to put on nice clothes and eat wonderful meals in beautiful spaces. And I think more and more, and I think because we developed the show basically during COVID, there was also this desire of like, let's just be someplace. Can we just be someplace beautiful for a while? Isn't that enough? And I remember watching this documentary I found on YouTube, which was really a jumping off point for the show. And it was about women in Palm Beach in the 1960s. And there was an older woman, and she was done up, and they're like, what do you like about Palm Beach? And this lady had been through it. You could tell, like, she had lived a life, and it might have been a life of wealth, but she'd been through it. There were multiple divorces, there were issues. And she just said, kind of, it's just so beautiful. And like, that was kind of the kernel of the show. It's like, the world is burning, and I'd like to just be someplace beautiful, please. So like, that first scene, they're talking about the women's movement, the first scene of the show, the women's movement and the gay movement and the Vietnam War. And they're just like, enough already, and it's like, it's absurd and it's sad and it's also funny.
I want to talk about that because the show is so many things and it, all at once. And you walk a very fine line with, it's very funny. It also has these moments that are, really heartbreaking. Can you talk about, sort of finding that tone in the writing? I don't know, like, obviously you have these wonderful actors too, and then you find it in the editing as well. But how do you sort of convey the tone you wanted to go with and get everyone on the same page?
Well, Kristen Wiig, I think, might be my spirit animal. We really delight in the same things. We giggle at the same things. And so I think, like, kind of the kernel of the tone kind of comes from our sort of, I mean, and yes, all the writers, but like the initial impulse is sort of our chemistry of like what kind of, turns us on. And more as we got to know each other through the shooting of the show, that started to really inform where the show was going. But my sort of standard answer to that question is, I think that the show really is sort of a gay fantasia that, queer filmmakers and queer artists of all types of, they pull from the past, they pull from conformity, we pull from pop culture, and then we sort of put it through this lens of observation and then sort of spit it back. And, I think the tone for, I think, for an American audience is rather bold and rather original. But I grew up obsessed with the films of Pedro Almodovar, and
Yeah.
those films, did everything that I wanted to do. They were soapy, they were melodramatic, they were farcical, they were thrillers, all in one movie. And that something that's executed well with the right people can be all things at once. And I think American audiences are a little bit more used to being accepting of that kind of whimsy or that kind of sort of like large queer palette if, everyone's speaking in French, or if, like, like Baz Luhrmann got away with because everybody was, had an Australian accent. So like Americans are a little less, maybe that comes out of sort of the actor studio, like the sobriety of like drama, like,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and like, I love performance. I love actors who can play style with truth at the same time. And this was just an embarrassment of riches in terms of the, not just just the skill level that these people are able to do that. Allison Janney, Carol Burnett, Julia Duffy, Mindy Cohn, Laura Dern, like they're all able to play style and wit and truth at the same time. And that's a rare quality.
You mentioned Almodovar, which I'm really mad at myself for not making that comparison earlier. It kind of reminded me. I don't know if you've been inspired at all by Louis Buñuel.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Maybe it's because of like the class warfare thing.
Yeah.
But like it's like almost
And
a
the
little
dark farce. Yeah.
yes, yes. And like this world is it's kind of parodying a world, but it's really not far off from the truth at
We just
all.
we just we just we just recreated those Slim Aarons photos. Our everything, there are certain scenes that we just restaged the photograph and put the scenes in. There's a scene at the top of episode 3 when Carol Burnett's in bed and she's going through her Rolodex. And I mean, that's a Slim Aarons, but I forget who the socialite is. It's not, it might have been one of the Lauders. Anyway, there's a very famous photo of Slim Aarons where a woman's like taking her breakfast in bed with the tray
Yep.
and like, the richness of the drapery. And she might even have a monocle on. I mean, seriously. And, you don't have to kind of put a hat on a hat. The people, in terms of the costume design and the production design, we really went for
Yeah.
authenticity, truly.
Please put Carol Burnett in a monocle in season 2.
Oh, done.
Promise us that.
And I think there's something, and I think again to the question of tone, it's like the show is really sincere.
Yeah.
It's really open-hearted and it's not cynical. And I love cynical. I love straight up satire, but it's like, we didn't, the show's very funny, but we didn't give it a comedy score. We gave it
Mhm.
a lush, melodramatic, full orchestra 1960s score. And the clothes were not commenting on the period, they were the period. Leslie Bibb is wearing Balmain dresses of, like these vintage Balmain dresses. And I mean, it was someone I'm like, and usually I'm very hyper controlling of wardrobe. And maybe because I went to theater school, I worked in the costume shop. I feel like I know, but I really actually don't. And the show, we were so tired. The show was so big that I was literally like, just surprise me every day. Like the actresses and Alex will work out their looks. And then I just want them. It was like such a joy every morning. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. And like Allison Janney walks in this gorgeous caftan that I've never seen before. And her hairstylist, Jill Crosby, who's such a genius, like has sewed like 5 hair pieces. And it's like 7 o'clock in the morning. And
Yeah.
everyone is just applauding these entrances because everybody just looks so divine. Anyway, that you didn't ask any of those. You didn't ask for
I
any
was
of
going to, I promise. Actually, I kept trying to get Kristen to admit she stole some costumes from the set, but she said,
no, she wouldn't have
yeah.
done.
She also said, where would I wear them? Everybody would know I stole them from Palm Royale.
That's despair.
I just
Also, we're
laughed.
gonna need him for season 2, so she can't take them.
That's right. I love that you use the word sincere because I find Maxine such a fascinating character because in the first episode, I thought she was our villain. I thought she was just this con woman,
Yeah.
who was going to be like horribly abusive to Carol Burnett. And she reveals herself to be so much more. Can you talk about sort of like revealing bits of character over a period of time where you concerned people would stay with her? I mean, it helps to have Kristen Wiig in the role, I know.
Yeah, you have a magnetic charismatician like Kristen, and you're way ahead of the game. But I'm glad you picked up on that because I think there was a sleight of hand in the pilot where I think I've been at this long enough where you're in conversation with the collective audience. Everybody is consuming so much television. Everybody knows what's going to happen or what the expectation of what should happen or it should be like this or whatever. And I felt like we were coming out of the anti-hero period. And like I said, I've written a lot of them. Nurse Jackie was my first job, and I don't think there's any bigger anti-hero than Nurse Jackie. And so I was like, okay, the pilot should be the surprise is that she's honest. Like the turn is she told Dinah the truth. Her husband is a pilot. He is a Delacorte. And what does it say about us that somebody sincere is is you know laying out an emotional case and wanting to belong, and we're like, you know what, I don't trust you, you're a liar.
Hmm.
And I think that's how most of us go through life. It's also how what most television characters are. So I kind of there was there was a there, I was probably being too cute by half, but that was part of the design of the pilot, was to say, oh, another liar, just another con person stealing from so and so. It's like, nope, she told you the truth from the beginning.
And the most
Um,
pleasant surprise, at least in that first the start, is that like she really loves her husband, and she ends up actually being a great caretaker. You know, like I fully think she deserves everything after take. She took really good care of Norma.
yeah, yeah. And she really deserves it. Spoiler alert, hopefully people have watched the whole thing, when you realize the biggest imposter of all is Norma. So the
Yeah.
person that she's striving to be is actually a fake herself. And isn't
Hmm.
that the real lesson? She doesn't know it yet in season one. She'll get there in season two, hopefully. Um, but isn't that what all of us learn when we get to the place we were striving to get? Is that the people there are also fraudulent in their own ways, and we're all running from, as we're trying to get to this place. And it's like, I'm a person with ambition. It's like, but you get to the place and you feel like you're the imposter, and then you realize everybody feels like that all the time.
Hmm.
So there's just sort of like great humanity in that, and also makes for like kind of like a fun metaphor for what we feel. And I think that's why she's relatable. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, everybody wants to be where they're not wanted.
I mean, I was thinking actually, you really excel at sort of subverting audiences' expectations. Like, I didn't expect to go into a movie about Tammy Faye Baker and come out thinking she was such a badass, or the complicated women of Dead to Me. These are people that you could. I feel like other lesser shows would be making them the punchline, would be
Right.
making them, but you love them.
Yeah, I think because we're all sort of just sloppy and trying. You have to, like, those are the good characters. One of my favorite things to write over the last few years was George and Tammy. And that was a big, with the network, it was really hard to get the network to really buy in on Tammy's character, because she makes a choice that isn't good for her in staying with this person. And I was like, but that's what most people do. People will relate. Not, I think it's so unfair. I'm going to go off on a tangent.
Please.
And it's especially true of gay characters and female characters and diverse characters, is that everybody has to be aspirational. And I think, and they have to be the model, because there's so few three-dimensional representations of this in the world, that as a member of, one class, we're sort of, you're sort of, everybody has to be a role model. And it's so unfair to the characters. There's no drama in it. So it's like, if you can, I remember I had a lot of fights with the network about episode 2 of George and Tammy, because George is violent with her. And then she says, I love him. And they're like,
Hmm.
I can't root for this lady. I'm like, you know what? It's Tammy Wynette. It's gonna be fine. It's Jessica Chastain as Tammy Wynette. We're gonna make a case for it. And but we come up against this a lot,
Yeah.
with certainly gay female character and female characters and diverse characters. The white male characters can be hateful, and we love them. Can make decisions that aren't in their best interest. It's like, that's where the drama is. It's like, fall in love with somebody and then have them make choices that make us cringe.
I mean, it's also realistic because we all make terrible choices.
Oh,
Nobody goes through life making all the right choices.
think about your investment in your best friend. Half of it is like, please stop.
It's so true. Sometimes I've broken my worst habits because I see other people doing them. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, that's what I'm putting people through.
I feel that way when I see an article of clothing that I own on somebody else. I'm like, is that what I look like in the world? No.
You mentioned this amazing cast, which also includes Oscar winners like Laura Dern and Allison Janney, and then legends like Carol Burnett and Bruce Dern. I'm sort of curious how much of the writing was done going into the show and how much you found yourself sort of writing for their voices.
The architecture of the show was always there. I think the show is, I would say 85% of it is exactly what's on the page, and the other 15 is play. But I definitely look at, once you have your cast, I think of it like a costume fitting, that like the actors have their own rhythms, and you do start writing to the rhythms of a voice. Like, the sing-song pattern of your actors, but I look at, it's like you wouldn't, the script is they come to the first fitting, and here's the script, here's the dress. Doesn't quite, it's a gorgeous dress, but it doesn't quite fit. So I sort of like look at the rewrites as sort of a fitting. It's like, we're going to take it in a little bit here. We're going to lengthen this. We're going to bring it down here. We're going to bring it up there. Like, uh, certainly but I will say the one big change was when we cast Carol.
Yeah.
She came out of that coma much quicker than she was originally intended, because we can't, we can't, she can't lay in that bed for
Yeah.
9 episodes.
Although she is brilliant at just laying in that bed or like
But she gets
communicating
laughs.
so much on her own. Like she's phenomenal. That's a star. Like you realize it.
More than that. I mean, there's the scene in episode 3 where Janny is looking for the key and Norma's blinking.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite things I ever shot. And I mean, Carol's face when Janny, and this was improvised, Janny's looking under she's looking under, you got bony ass Norma, and she's sort of like looking for the key. And then like Carol just makes this choice to kind of enjoy it, like kind of enjoy, like,
Yeah.
it's not on the page. That's just a genius being a genius.
I was going to ask how
You,
much of
you
it.
supplied the architecture. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, this happens all the time. It's like the scene is perfect, and then those moments of inspiration when the actor's really in their skin in the scene. There's
Yeah.
one scene in episode 7 where it's a beautiful scene between Kristen and Ricky, and their relationship had grown as friends on set, just Ricky and Kristen. And she says, "Go run away with your prince." And Ricky gave her a kiss on the cheek, which was scripted. And then he ran away like a little boy, and he screamed, and he threw up his arms. He says, "I love you." And that we hadn't scripted. And it was just the actor in the moment feeling the thing. And off of that improvisation, we wrote a whole scene in episode 10 where she finally says, "I love you" back. And it's
Aw.
off of, okay, we built this scene, so it made Ricky feel a certain thing. Here comes the pearl. And you just have to be, as a writer and as a showrunner, as a director, you have to be like, okay, go towards that impulse. Because at some point, we are all the authors of this thing. The actors are the authors of the silences as much as they are, sort of whatever emotional work they're doing to bring to the page. It's like their listening is writing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be watchful of all that and not shoot yourself on the foot by not trying to control it in a way. It's like, I didn't see it that way. Let me strangle it till that's how you get life and spontaneity out of something.
Robert actually might be my favorite character and the one that I feel the most empathy for. And Ricky is so good.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, also the nicest human being on earth.
Yep.
Everyone tells me. So I don't know if how much he's playing a part and how much of himself he just brings to that role.
Well, he's definitely acting. But he is sweet and as tender as that character. Yeah, no, he's just an angel. Like he's one of those people. That's why he's a huge pop star. It's like he comes out on stage and everybody connects to him, and it's because he's just got this gigantic heart. It's remarkable. And look, when we first conceived that character, he was a little bitchier, a little snarkier.
Really?
And then we had Ricky on set looking at Kristen, and I was like, oh, we don't need another snarky, bitchy character on this show. We need somebody who is the moral center, who is the quote unquote straight man on the show. It's like you've got all these cut up ladies, and I sort of love that our in our gay Fantasia, the straight man is gay.
Yeah.
So, and I love his last name is Martin. So I was like, oh, you're Martin and Kristen's Lewis.
Well, it's funny because also in that first episode, I thought he was going to be set up to be her nemesis. The
Yeah.
way he kicks her out of the club, I was like, okay, no, wait, this is the people I kept thinking were the bad guys were the best people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was always intended that that was going to be a love story that grew, that
Oh,
they sort of have this Sam and Diane kind of contentiousness, to use an old trope, that they're like, I just can't stand you, and of course that's the person where the greatest love is ultimately.
yeah.
She's screaming right at the end. She's not screaming about her marriage. Like
Yeah.
thoughts of her marriage are gone. Look, he's hurt.
I also just have to give a shout out because you've cast two actors who I don't think we see enough of, Mindy Cohn and Julia Duffy, and they're both so wonderful. I don't know if like me, those are actors from your childhood that you begged to come out of retirement.
Um, well, I don't think neither of them have retired. They've had steady careers, and illustrious careers. I will say, they both read. We're in this world where, and everyone's putting themselves on tape, and we had wonderful actors. It was sort of, I think because the show, as the breakdowns are going out, it's like stars Kristen Wiig, Laura Dern, Allison Janney, and Carol Burnett, and it's like everybody at that point is like, I'll do it, I'll read, and it was so like, and you get the tapes back from casting, and I'm like, excuse my language, like, holy shit, Mindy Cohn put herself up. Like, I cannot believe this. And I ran, and the tape, of course, was brilliant. And I ran and I called Chris, and I was like, go to your computer. Mindy Cohn, Mindy Cohn. And it was the same for Julia Duffy. There was no hesitation.
Yeah.
Those were the clear cut, like, and I'm such a fan of both of them. The fact that they're on my show is, for this little gay boy from Oklahoma, I'm like, I cannot believe Stephanie from Newhart and Natalie from The Facts of Life are on my show. It's just like, it's such a pinch me thing, and I love those women.
Oh, and they're both
They're
so good.
snipers. Like, like Julia Duffy is a sniper with comedy.
Hmm.
She just, my favorite moment of hers. There's so many, but when she's shaking down Kristen for the money for little Shelby, I love just maybe my favorite thing I've ever shot. But there's a moment in episode 6 where she's asking about, Neil Armstrong's suit. Like, this is a replica of Neil Armstrong. She's like, where's the real one? And the guy says, he took it home. And the cutaway, again, author of Silence, is Julia just crossed one eye. And I didn't see it on the day because it was in a close up, and the monitors aren't all that clear. And when I was in the edit, and I was like, look what that lady just did for that, not very good joke. She
Yeah.
killed it.
It's a pretty
"No,
good
this
joke.
joke doesn't quite work. Let me just cross an eye a little bit." Like, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, the show does have such a myriad of colorful characters, and it's just such a joy to watch. Is the atmosphere on set as much fun? I
Yeah,
know it's work, but it seems like you're probably having a lot of fun.
it's a lot of fun. Yeah. No, I mean, certainly, long days, it gets hard, but there's nobody I'd rather be in the trenches with than these writers and these directors and these actors, and um, Kristen as a number one sets an amazing tone. Laura Dern as a producer sets an amazing tone, and everybody wants to do their best for Carol. So any day that Carol's there is going to be a good day, and the crew loves her, and she sits on set between takes and tells stories, and it's a vibe. It's a vibe.
Other than maybe not laughing during takes, what ended up being the biggest challenge in season 1?
Oh, that's interesting. It might have been some of the technical, like a couple of technical things. I think, the whale in episode 8 was pretty hard. Uh,
Sorry. Yeah.
uh, so some of that's because we're not like a VFX show, so
Mhm.
like kind of stepping outside of our own box of the show. Um, the big galas didn't phase me really. I was a dancer, so like directing Havana Nights and with 250 dancers, I was from a dance team. I know how to move those people around. I know how to talk to the choreographer. So those big set pieces were just a joy, that an Apple would give us the resources to make what is a rather niche show, like in terms of what it is tonally. It's like this kind of comedy and this kind of like chewing the scenery, like this happens in gay bars off Santa Monica. Like we don't usually get this many millions of dollars an episode to do what we did. So
I actually want to take some questions from the audience before I move on to some sort of more logistical questions about your process.
sure.
We have a question from Kat Kramer, loves Palm Royale, wants to know if there will be new characters introduced in season 2.
Oh, that's a good question. And the answer is yes.
Ooh.
Not a lot. We have a big ensemble, so it's very targeted, sort of big impact, some big impact cameos for sure.
Well, I also have to imagine that everybody wants to be on the show now, even if they didn't before when you just announced the cast. Like your phone must be ringing off the hook, or I don't know if it rings off the hook when people text because I know nobody actually.
I live in the country most of the time, and I have no cell service. So, I live out in Connecticut, and there's no cell towers in Connecticut. So, if my phone's ringing off the hook, I wouldn't know it. I truly wouldn't. By the time I get back to the city and my phone populates, it's like, oh, this is a week old. They already hate me. I didn't call them back.
Yeah, I used to live in a canyon that just didn't get cell reception. So after 5 p.m., it was like, sorry.
Yeah.
Weirdly, though, nobody was really trying to reach me. So, we have a question from Max G. How far out did you plot the arc of the series before you felt ready to shoot?
Oh, I think we went in, well, we had the architecture of the season before we shot. We kind of knew the tentpole things, even if all the scripts weren't written, or the script might be written, but I hadn't shared it with the network yet. You do hang on to those things kind of as long as you can. Um, uh, just so like the more time people have to mess with your stuff, they're gonna take it. So you have to be very judicious about hope nobody from Apple's listening to me right now. You have to be judicious like when you share, like and Apple's been tremendous creative partners to us. I think we went into production with four scripts,
Oh,
and the network at that point had, I think, 4 additional outlines, and I still had those 4 scripts, but it wasn't ready to share them. So I went into production with no, I went into production with 9 scripts.
really?
Or that had been turned in. Now, those 5 scripts changed dramatically. So it's sort of like there's sort of a rough draft. No, they're not that rough. They're pretty great. But like but things are going to change on set. Combinations of people will surprise you. Storylines you were less, you thought were going to go like gangbusters, they start to fall away. So the middle of the season starts to shift, and then by the end, we sort of saved writing the finale until we were about halfway through production, and we're like, okay, these are the things that we want to have explode in the finale. We always knew that she was going to have her breakdown on stage at the beach ball, and she'd be singing when it happened. These are things we knew were sort of like, this is where we're getting to. It's like her final humiliation will be in front of everybody, and her delusion, like she'll reach exactly where she's always wanted to be her entire life. And when she gets there, every delusion hits her. The truth of her life finally hits her in the face when she gets where she wants to be.
Hmm.
We knew
I
that.
found I loved her so much. I found myself just going like, "You're so much better than all of them. Just get out of there."
Yeah.
But then we wouldn't have a show.
Yeah.
It's interesting you said that certain storylines fall away because we always hear about, this actor was only going to be on 2 episodes, but they were so good we kept writing for them. We don't hear too often about, when you kind of know something maybe isn't resonating as much, so you move away from it. How do you know on set, or do you see it in the edit while you're making a series, especially?
You know while you're making it. Hopefully you see it.
Yeah.
Hopefully And it actually didn't happen too much on this one. I think this one was sort of like, it was actually more the other thing where, like the guy who was the auctioneer caller in episode 2 was only supposed to be there once. And then he was cracking everybody up. So we brought him back for all the other episodes. Like, I think Mindy Cohn's character was supposed to be in 3. She ended up being in 9. Like it, that happened more than the other.
Mhm.
Um, but you have to be, I think the job of a showrunner is like to let your show at some point show you what it wants to be and not be scared of that. And the other part of, and when I put on sort of the directing hat, it's like make sure your day is planned in such a way and structured so you have enough time to do everything and you have enough time and space to have the informed surprise. And I don't call them happy accidents. They come from intentionality. They're not accidents. They're connected to good choices that have been made in pre-production, been made on the page, have been made in the costume department on the set, and then you get there and it's like the informed inspiration happens. And that is the opposite, I think, of people who work from chaos. They're like, oh, I just like something. I'm like, no. It's like you might get something out of that, but does it have the force of intentionality behind it? You know, um, I think there are so many people who are like, let's see what happens on the day. I was like, let's plan because you'll be surprised no matter what. It's just you know, how valuable is your surprise? Like, don't you want it to be, a diamond and not like, okay, well, we'll fix that in the edit. If I put that with that, put that with that, and although I did have uh, my editing guru, Nancy Richardson, who was my first editing professor at UCLA. She says, you're going to write your movie 3 times. You write the script and then you're writing it on set and then you're writing it in the edit, you
Yeah.
know? But I will say when budgets get tight, you have to make decisions. And it's like, our cuts are pretty dead on to what the scripts were and pretty dead on to what we shot.
You kind of addressed the second part of this question, but I'm just going to ask the whole thing from Morgan De Luna. How does the process of writing a comedy differ from more dramatic works in terms of infusing humor into the story? And do you leave room for the actors to play with those humorous moments?
You you leave room if the actors are actually funny. Sometimes you're like, you're not on this show, but there are times that
Yeah.
we're like, we're not improvising, guys. Like, not, yeah, no, no. Um, uh, what was the first part of the question? There's no difference
Okay.
from comedy or drama, just in terms of investing. And I guess every drama I've worked on has, like all the best dramas have good laughs. Like, so I don't think there's, and look, I'm not a hard comedy writer. Like I don't come out of sitcoms. I don't come out of like late night joke writing, like that's a whole other skill that I don't have. I think I'm very funny. Um, and I've written on some really funny shows, but it's, I think it comes out of more of like the emotional truth than sort of like, okay, I don't think I've ever done a like, okay, guys, give me 5 alternate jokes here. Like I don't do that. I have a lot of respect for it because I just don't, I can't write that way. I'm not good at it.
No, the funniest things to me are sometimes like really tragic to other people. But life is funny that way.
Oh my God, the saddest movies, I don't know, like Terms of Endearment is like it's like my perfect film, and it's as funny as it is heartbreaking. And, you know, what's that Joni Mitchell line? Laughing and crying are the same release.
Yeah. Well, I was like, terms of endearment, like that heartbreaking scene where she's trying to get drugs for her daughter. It's also very funny.
And she
The
said,
way that,
yeah,
yeah, so driven.
the way
So it's
she finishes it, she's like, thank you. And like walks out. So good.
God, people have such cooler names than me. This is a question from Dig Monroe.
Okay.
Wants to know how you know when an episode or series is ready and that you can't make it any better.
Oh, you can always make something better. Just deadlines make you stop. Like, at some point you just stop. It's like, we're done. You're out of time. Like, so, um, as much as I don't love getting notes, it's like, okay, well, as long as you have time to make it better. But I will say there have been a few, and I'm always pushing for that. So I don't know. I feel like there've been a couple of times I've turned stuff in. I'm like, I can't do better than that. And then it's like it's so heartbreaking because it's like, you get the notes back and you've just been eviscerated. It's like,
Mm.
it's like, am I crazy or do we live in an upside down world or is their agenda just way off? Like, because, and it wasn't on this show, but I did turn in a script on a show that I was show running. And I was like, that's the best script that has ever come out of any writer's room I have ever. And it was one of these ones where it's like the first draft didn't work, but we all loved the episode and it was a gang write. Like it had to get into the network. And it's like, I had such a good team. And I was like, you take that line, you take that line, you take that line, you take that line. End of the day, we're going to put them all together and I'm going to calm and smooth it out. And when it was done, what was so great is like this group of writers shared a brain. There was no ego. There's probably a little ego from the original writer of the script because it never feels good, to have that happen. But it's if that writer wrote what the room broke, it's not the writer's fault, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this person wrote what the room broke. It didn't work. We had to go back. We tear it open, and in 24 hours we put it back together. And I was like, "Yo, welcome, network." Yeah, it's like this is like we were so high because we knew we'd nailed it. And I'm like, I cannot do any better than this. I cannot wait for the call that says no notes. And it's always those ones. It's always those ones where you've knocked it out of the park. And it's
Yeah.
so debilitating because you're like, if they don't want my best, I don't know. And then there are times you try something and you're like, okay, we tried. Like, this is,
Yeah.
it's like, we just got to get it. And they're like, we love it. I'm like, well, there's some things I'd like to do to it, like, and can I have a little more time? And then you get that time. So I don't know. That was kind of a long way around. Like, and then, yeah, there were a couple episodes on this show where I was just like, yes, you know, all of them. But there were a couple. There are a couple on this season that are very close to my heart in that way.
When you were telling me that there was something that you thought was the best thing you'd ever turned in, I was waiting for you to tell me that the network hated it, but they actually liked it.
That script that I was talking about, they hated it. They
Yeah.
hated it. I
They
almost.
did hate it.
Oh, they
Oh.
hated it. Like, they're like, we're going to have to shoot the next episode. The script is far from ready. We don't even know what this is. I mean, I almost got fired over it. I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I can do any better for you guys. So like, and that was sort of early in my show running time. And so I've sort of developed a little bit of a thicker skin, but you need to always have that emotional attachment to the thing you're writing or the thing you're making, or don't do it. Like, I mean, just don't do that job. Like, because it's not going to work out. It's just not going to be a good experience for you. You're not going to, anyway. That's a whole other. That's a whole other.
In retrospect, do you still think it was like one of the best things you ever turned in, or do you think they had a point? No.
No, I was right.
Yeah. Sorry you didn't get to.
And then this business, sometimes like being right isn't enough. And that was probably the lesson. It's like, I'm right, but it's their money. So now I got to find a way to the middle, and it's not every show where, you can play the card. And I'm not in a place in my career where I'm like, take it or leave it, this is what I'm shooting.
Yeah.
Like you gotta get good at playing. You gotta get good at managing up, which I'm better at than I was when I turned in that script. I'll say that. And that was many years ago.
It's a skill. It's a big part of it.
Huge part of it.
We have a lot of questions about the writer's room. Cole Quirk, another great name, wants to
Wonderful.
know, what stood out to you in a writing sample when you were staffing the writers in the room?
Um, I think in the first page if somebody can write. Like, and if somebody can write, I think they can write anything. As long as like there's, what I don't respond to is when I think someone is like, here's my comedy sample, and they've made cynical choices to hit a mark. That I have a real ear for. This show was uh, a little different because I had worked with every writer before. So I had pulled from almost every room I've ever been in to create this writer's room. And so there's many years of shared history and um, but what do I look? I just look for someone who I know who has an original voice, who isn't trying so hard to be original that they've sold themselves out. And also, but the biggest one is like, just feeling like the script is inauthentic.
Yeah.
You know,
Um,
it doesn't mean
question.
the person can't write. It's just that they came at it in some ways the way the question is posed. Like, what stands out? What are you looking for? I'm like, I'm looking for you.
That's why I also like earlier when you said you used the word sincere, I was like, I think it can be very hard. I think we're almost discouraged from being sincere sometimes, so it can be hard to find.
Yeah.
Question from Roderick Sandoval wants to know what strategies can older individuals employ to enhance their prospects of securing a staff writer position?
Oh, I think it's the same thing. Make sure your script is good. Be willing to humble yourself because it's hard when you're older. Um, I got my first staff writing job at 36, which isn't the typical staff writing age. One of my favorite writers that I work with, Sherry Holman, I think her first staff writing job, she was in her 40s when she got it. And um, I don't know if there's anything different, but I do think there's probably um, what I have noticed, honestly, more out of, I hate to say this, but sort of like out of graduate students, or people who are highly educated in writing, which I went to graduate school, think about, but it's like people aren't willing to sort of humble themselves for entry level stuff. I mean, staff writing really is entry level, and when I got my first staff writing job, just quick anecdote, I had just had a film that I wrote and directed premiere at Toronto. It sold to the Weinstein Company and like what was probably one of the biggest sales of the year. And I was like, my ticket is made. Like and I had off of that, I got a deal to write a script for HBO with Josh Brolin. And I'm like, I'm cooking with gas. I'm cooking with gas, right? And then, and people are like, I'm getting into rooms to showrun off of this movie. So I'm like having this real inflated sense of myself. And then Harvey Weinstein, and we all know that guy, like messed with my film. It comes out, it tanks, and I would have been fine with it tanking had it been my film.
Right.
And I love that movie. It's called Dirty Girl. It's a little bit of a cult classic now, but and I love it. I love it. I love it. There's a version I love more. So that's what I'll say. And so it's like to have that version of the movie not do well. So then when I got this job as a staff writer, even though, in some ways in my brain, it was a humble pie. I was like, I'm gonna go be an auteur now, and it's like, no, you're doing the boards on staff. And it's like, not that, look, any day you can write for Edie Falco is a great day.
Yeah.
But I do think if you are older, there is a humbling that has to happen because you're at a different place in your life. You've got probably have a mortgage, you might have children, and it's not enough money and it's long hours and it's hard,
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
but I loved I realized how much I didn't know in that room. I was nowhere near ready to show run a show. Like in my brain, I thought I was nowhere near ready. And so
Yeah.
it was exactly where I needed to be with staff writing on that show.
Does the director's cut of Dirty Girl exist somewhere that we might have
Um,
received? Really?
yeah,
It's
it's on a hard drive in a storage unit in the valley. And
all right. Can I?
it might, who knows? Maybe someday it'll just get leaked. I
Yeah.
have this thought that I'm just putting it out there into the universe. It's sort of like pick the 5 Weinstein Company films and there's more than 5. Well,
Yeah.
what are the ones you want to see the director's cut of that, you know, I want Criterion to like release, you know, Todd Haynes's cut of Velvet Goldmine. You know, like there's just a few, you know, that I'm like, oh, you know, it's anyway, maybe someday.
Did they ever release the original cut of Snowpiercer?
I don't know.
I don't know if they did. I feel like maybe they did, but I could be
This is
wrong.
like a movement. I was like, give each one of these filmmakers 100 grand to go back into their film and restore it.
Yes, and then re-release it. It'd be huge.
Yeah. It's not huge. It's just, you know, it'd be a
Yeah.
nice gesture.
Yeah. Well, I think it would
There
make
are more important things in the world, let's face it.
I did want to ask you some logistical questions about sort of how you write. Are you the kind of person who outlines? Do you use note cards? What's sort of your process?
Well, you have to outline for networks. Uh everything is different. Like my favorite thing is to feel my way through something organically, like where will it go next, you know, but you don't always have that luxury. I actually feel you get the best result that way is to kind of like just write it straight through and then see what you have and then go back. I feel like that's the best process. That doesn't necessarily work in television. It works in pilot writing, you know, like if you, but um because you know, you have to turn in outlines, you know, and but because I've been at every level of staff, sort of know what a writer needs to go off to draft, and you cannot leave a writer hanging. So I don't use note cards. I do vertical whiteboards, and I do the boards myself. This is probably coming off of, you know, Nurse Jackie when I was the staff writer, and then Clyde Phillips was the showrunner. He said, not only are you tall, you're the staff writer, so you can do the boards. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, I'll do it. And now I always do it. It's like I never graduated to giving that up. Like usually that is the staff writer job. But my friend Liz Flayhive, who was on Nurse Jackie with me and has gone on to create Glow and Roar and is just a fabulous writer and showrunner. She made an observation. She's like, oh, you have to feel your way through the story. So it's like, and I think it's because I was a dancer. She like would watch me like act out the show and put it while I was putting it on the board. And I think she's right. So now that's what I do. And so when, you know, our you know, we sort of have the big map of the season and we like kind of throw up, it's like the whale is there, party's there, astronaut there, and you kind of get a sense of what the kind of, you know, it's like if you know, like what the soundboard looks like, you know, like the wavelengths of it look like. Then you get to the individual episodes and like what are the big turning points, and then you get into the fine breaking, and then things start moving around on the board. I don't use note cards. I find it frustrating, you know.
Too.
I just like, what are all these papers? I was like, just wipe it off and write it again. And I think there is the hand mind connection. It's like every time you write it down, you're deepening it and you're recommitting to it. And I think the handwriting of it is important. So I think that's the note card. It's like I can't just say, and again, it's I don't you know, I don't write mysteries and I don't write, you know, hard sitcoms. So I can't just say, let's do this event and it's modular. It's like my things aren't really modular in that way. So and again,
I'm so,
no aspersions. It's just how it works for me. Sorry.
I'm so sorry we're out of time because you were about to tell us everything that happens in season 2 of
Sorry.
Palm Royale. Okay, you can do it in 20 seconds or less.
Nope. I'm gonna do it.
Well, whatever it is, I can't wait to see where it's going. I want to congratulate you on a great season. Thank you so much for being here and for your candidness and transparency and all
Hopefully I
your
wasn't too
knowledge.
candid. I do like when I'm actually talking to a peer group. It's like, okay, here's what you really need to know.
Yeah, no, it's so appreciated. And thank you. I want to remind everyone, obviously, all the episodes of Palm Royale are now streaming on Apple TV Plus. Go back and watch them again because you just notice more and more fun little things going on. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thanks, everybody.